Hey crew, it is Pitt and I am back with some more Esoterica. Today we are diving back into the works of Mr. Manly Hall. We are dealing with the secret teachings of all ages. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various topics that are brought to light. I have a little bit of enlightenment in some areas and a little bit of wisdom to dispense in others. And so that is what I am doing over here. This is not going to be a standard reading. But the format is not for everybody, and that is perfectly fine. Some people find some enjoyment in it. If you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time you get lost in the sauce when some terminology is a little bit unfamiliar, there are several playlists that will be linked in the corner up above and the box down below along with the original source material so that you can go back and understand what I am talking about. I tend to put the definitions towards the beginning of the playlist, but for some reason YouTube doesn't like to have the playlist in order, I found out today, so you may have to dig a little bit for it. We're dealing with the tarot cards today, and I have already done 3 individual videos with my own individual content where I discuss those in some great detail, so I do not know how much new information will be in this today. But that is part of this playlist, the Esoterica playlist, and you are more than welcome to go back and see the path to enlightenment that actually lies within the tarot cards. It may get expounded upon today, it may not. It depends on how it turns out. I have not read this ahead of time. We are exploring it together, and we are going to see what is going on with an analysis of tarot cards. Let's dig in and see what's up. Opinions of authorities differ widely concerning the origin of playing cards, the purpose for which they were intended, and the time of their introduction into Europe. In his researches into the history of playing cards, Samuel Weller Singer advances the opinion that cards reached southern Europe from India by way of Arabia. It is probable that the tarot cards were part of the magical and philosophical lore secured by the Knights Templar from the Saracens, or one of the mystical sects then flourishing in Syria. Returning to Europe, the Templars, to avoid persecution, concealed the arcane meanings of the symbols by introducing the leaves of their magical book ostensibly as a device for amusement and gambling. In support of this contention, Mrs. John King van Rensselaer states, "The cards were brought by the home-returning warriors, who imported many of the newly acquired customs and habits of the Orient to their own countries. Seems to be a well-established fact that is not true, and it does not contradict the statement made by some writers who declared that the gypsies, who about that time began to wander over Europe, brought with them and introduced cards, which they used, as they do in the present day, for divining the future. See the Devil's Picture books, because that lets you know the intentionality behind that particular set of definitions. We have talked extensively about the tarot cards. I have 4 videos, 3 of which are my own videos, and we read through the introduction by Mr. White, who, if you did not know, is the guy responsible for the most popular of the tarot decks, and he went through an extensive amount of research before he released his deck, and he could not find the origin. He did, however, state that it was probably not this. So, when I say it's not true, that's not my opinion. That's the guy who brought you the tarot cards' opinion. Through the gypsies, the tarot cards may be traced back to the religious symbolism of the ancient Egyptians. That is patently untrue. In his remarkable work, The Gypsies, Samuel Roberts presents ample proof of their Egyptian origin. I will read that, but I do not believe that. In one place, he writes, "When gypsies originally arrived in England is very uncertain. They are first noticed in our laws by several statutes against them in the reign of Henry VIII, in which they are described as an outlandish people, calling themselves Egyptians, who do not profess any craft or trade, but go on about in great numbers. A curious legend relates that after the destruction of the Serapeum in Alexandria, a large body of attendant priests banded themselves together to preserve the secrets of the rites of Serapis. Their descendants, gypsies, carrying with them the most precious of the volumes saved from the burning library, the Book of Enoch, or Tehote, which is 2 completely different things, the tarot, became wanderers upon the face of the earth, remaining a people apart with ancient language and a birthright of magic and mystery. If you are unaware, I have done the Book of Enoch. It is part of the Unconventional Bible Study, I'm pretty sure. It may be the Unconventional Prophecy. I'm not sure if I put it in the actual Bible study or not, but I do have the Book of Enoch. We read through and we discussed much in the same way that we are doing here, much in the same way that I did the entirety, well, not the entirety, but most of the Bible. And again, this is not true, right? The Book of Enoch and the Book of Tiote are widely separated. They are not even remotely the same things. And to intimate that they are is deceptive at best. Probably just misled. I'll grant him misled and misunderstanding, right? But this is almost certainly not true. Court de Gabelin believed that the word tarot itself derived from the two Egyptian words tar, meaning road, and ro, meaning royal. Thus, the tarot constitutes the royal road to wisdom, c'est le monde primitif. In his History of Magic, P. Christian, the mouthpiece of a certain French secret society, presents a fantastic account of the purported initiation into the Egyptian mysteries, wherein the 22 major tarots assume the proportions of trestle boards of immense size and line a great gallery. Stopping before each card in turn, the initiator described its symbolism to the candidate. Edouard Schur, whose source of information was similar to that of Christians, hints at the same ceremony in his chapter on initiation into the Hermetic Mysteries. See the Great Initiates. While the Egyptians may well have employed the tarot cards in their rituals, these French mystics present no evidence other than their own assertions to support this theory. The validity of so-called Egyptian tarot, now in circulation, has never been satisfactorily established. The drawings are not only quite modern, but the symbolism itself savors of French rather than Egyptian influence. And again, I refer you back to the actual video where I have actually talked about that. And yes, they are not what is being described here, but also I do believe, and I state in those videos, that I do believe that there is a path to enlightenment that is outlined by the tarot cards. As a matter of fact, I give you the process by which I believe that they are showing that. That is because of my direct revelations, right? Not necessarily directly related to the tarot cards, but the steps that are required for enlightenment. And there seems to be a correlation between the steps required for enlightenment and the tarot cards. And if they are overlaid in a certain manner, which is outlined in those videos, you can see how that path is laid out and you can follow it to enlightenment. Hopefully, if you go back and look, it is clear enough what I mean by that. And so I do believe that that part is probably based in truth, even though most of the rest of this is probably not. The tarot is undoubtedly a vital element in Rosicrucian symbolism, possibly the very book of universal knowledge which the members of the order claim to possess. The Rota Mundi is a term frequently occurring in the early manifestos of the Fraternity of the Rose Cross. The word Rota, by rearrangement of its letters, becomes tarot, the ancient name of these mysterious cards. Refer back to Grammatica for why I think that is stupid. The ancient names of these mysterious cards, W.F.C. Wigston has discovered evidence that Sir Francis Bacon employed the tarot symbolism in his ciphers. The numbers 21, 56, and 78, which are all directly related to the divisions of the tarot deck, are frequently involved in Bacon's cryptograms. In the great Shakespearean folio of 1623, the Christian name of Lord Bacon appears 21 times on page 56 of the Histories. And of course, that is absolutely proof positive that that is the thing. See the Columbus of literature. Many symbols appearing upon the tarot cards have definite Masonic interest. They were written by a Mason. The Pythagorean numerologists will also find an important relationship to exist between the numbers on the cards and the designs accompanying the numbers. The Kabbalist will be immediately impressed by the significant sequence of the cards and the alchemist will discover certain emblems meaningless, save to one verse in the divine chemistry of transmutation and regeneration. As the Greeks placed the letters of their alphabet, with their corresponding numbers, upon the various parts of the body of their humanly represented logos, so the tarot cards have an analogy, not only in the parts and members of the universe, but also in the divisions of the human body. They are, in fact, the key to the magical constitution of man. And again, I refer you to the tarot playlist. The tarot cards must be considered, 1, as separate and complete hieroglyphs, each representing a distinct principle, law, power, or element in nature. 2, in relation to each other as the effect of one agent operating upon another. And 3, as vowels and consonants of a philosophic alphabet. The laws governing all phenomena are represented by the symbols upon the tarot cards, whose numerical values are equal to the numerical equivalents of the phenomena. As every structure consists of certain elemental parts, so the tarot cards represent the components of the structure of philosophy, irrespective of the science or philosophy with which the student is working. The tarot cards can be identified with the essential constituents of his subject, each card thus being related to a specific part according to mathematical and philosophical laws. An imprisoned person, writes Eliphas Levi, with no other book than the tarot, if he knew how to use it, could, in a few years, acquire universal knowledge and would be able to speak on all subjects with unequaled learning and inexhaustible eloquence. That is not correct. Right? You can find enlightenment, I believe, through the tarot cards if you follow the path that I have laid out, freely available for everybody. Right? I don't put that in a book where you have to buy it, even though it may wind up there one day. It is freely available on the internet, and it will always be so. But you're not going to get universal knowledge and understanding. That is not going to happen. You're not going to suddenly become able to do complicated mathematical logarithmic calculations. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to be able to discourse on philosophy or discourse on physics. It is not going to be some magical thing that happens. It is a way for you to master yourself and to begin the path to mastering magic. That is true, but it is not going to give it to you. You have to fight for it. You have to go through, research it, and understand it. There is a path. It is laid out, and you can follow it, but it is not this. See Transcendental Magic. The diverse opinions of eminent authorities on the tarot symbolism are quite irreconcilable. The conclusions of the scholarly Court de Gobelin and the bizarre Grand D'Italia, the first authorities on the subject, not only are at radical variance, but both are equally discredited by Levi, whose arrangement of the tarot trumps was rejected in turn by author Edward White and Paul Case as being an effort to mislead students. Author Edward White is the guy who made the tarot deck that is the most popular tarot deck out there, and the one that I was referring to as being made by a Mason. The followers of Levi, especially Pappas, Christian, Westcott, and Charest, are regarded by the Reformed tarotist as honest but benighted individuals who wandered in darkness for the lack of Pamela Coleman Smith's new deck of tarot cards with revisions by Mr. White. Right, these two collaborated. It is a Smith-White deck. Most writers of the tarot, Mr. White a notable exception, have proceeded upon the hypothesis that the 22 major trumps represent the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. This supposition is based upon nothing more substantial than the coincidence that both consist of 22 parts. That is true. There is nothing more to link those two than the pure coincidence that there are 22 of them. That Postel, St. Martin, and Levi all wrote books divided into sections corresponding to the major tarots is an interesting sidelight on the subject. The major trump cards portray incidents from the book of Revelation, and the Apocalypse of St. John is also divided into 22 chapters. No, that is a lie. The major trump cards portray incidents from the book of Revelation is not true. That is patently untrue. This is self-insertion of the Christians once again. The Apocalypse of St. John is divided into 22 chapters is an interesting coincidence. That is true. Assuming the Kabbalah to hold the solution to the tarot riddle, seekers have often ignored the other possible lines of research. The task, however, of discovering the proper relationship sustained by the tarot trumps to the letters of the Hebrew alphabet and the paths of wisdom thus far has not met with any great measure of success. The major trumps of the tarot and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet cannot be synchronized without first fixing the correct place of the unnumbered or zero card, Lemat, the Fool. Levi places this card between the 20th and 21st tarots, assuming to it the Hebrew letter Shin. The same order is followed by Papist, Christian, and White, the last, however, declaring this arrangement to be incorrect. I have an explanation for that. We'll get to it in a second. Westcott makes the zero card the 22nd of the major tarot trumps. On the other hand, both Court de Gobelin and Paul Case place the unnumbered card before the first numbered card of the major trumps. For if any natural order of the numbers, according to either the Pythagorean or Kabbalistic system, be adhered to, the zero card must naturally precede the number 1. All right, I'm going to tell you, right? This is a spoiler. It is a hint for you to go back and check out the other tarot. If you are interested in tarot, it's really something, y'all. There are 22 cards that can be divided equally into sevens. What do you mean? The zero is held outside of that. There are 3 sets of 7, with the Fool card being the 8th card for each of the 3 sets. It is held into the 21st place just prior to the divine card, the card of divinity. I think it's the world is what the actual label of it is, but it is the separation between the mortal and the divine. That's why it's placed in that spot. That's why the 0 is between 20 and 21. It is not for these reasons. But that card applies to card 1 through 7 plus card 0, card 8 through 16, 14, whatever, plus the 0, and then 15 through 21 plus the 0 is 3 sets of 8 cards. And if you have any inkling whatsoever of what I'm about, the fundamental harmonics of life are defined by 8, and those 8 also overlay the actual minor arcana. And so, you should definitely go back and check out this pathway I'm telling you about. It is something. It's not the only path. I never claimed to have the only path, but it is something that does outline a pretty clear path of how to do things. This does not dispose of the problem, however, for efforts to assign a Hebrew letter to each tarot trump in sequence produce an effect far from convincing. That's because they are completely and totally and utterly unrelated. Mr. White, who re-edited the tarot, expresses himself thus: I am not to be included among those who are satisfied that there is a valid correspondence between Hebrew letters and the tarot trump symbols. See Introduction to the Book of Formation by Newt Stenring. The real explanation may be that the major tarots are no longer in the same sequence as when they formed the leaves of Hermes' sacred book. For the Egyptians, or even their Arabian successors, could have purposely confused the cards so that their secrets might be better preserved. No. Mr. Case has developed a system which, while superior to most, depends largely upon 2 debatable points, namely the accuracy of Mr. White's revised tarot and the justification for assigning the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet to the unnumbered 0 card. Since Aleph, the first Hebrew letter, has the numerical value of 1. Its assignment to the 0 card is equivalent to the statement that 0 is equal to the letter Aleph, and therefore synonymous with the number 1. With rare insight, Court de Gobelin assigned the 0 card to Ein Sof, the unknowable first cause, as the central panel of the Bembeen table represents the creative power surrounded by 7 triads of manifesting deities. So may the 0 card represent the eternal power of which the 21 surrounding or manifesting aspects are but limited expressions. You've got that backwards. It's not 7 triads. It is 3 heptads. septads? If the major trumps be considered as limited forms existing in the abstract substance of the zero card, then it becomes their common denominator. Which letter, then, of the Hebrew alphabet is the origin of all the remaining letters? The answer is apparent. Yod. In the presence of so many speculations, one or more may not offend. The zero card, Lamad, the Fool, has been likened to the material universe because the mortal sphere is the world of unreality. The lower universe, like the mortal body of man, is but a garment, a motley costume, well likened to cap and bells. Beneath the garments of the Fool is the divine substance, however, of which the jester is but a shadow. This world is a Mardi Gras, a pageantry of divine sparks masked in the garb of fools. That is not what Mardi Gras is. Was not this zero card, the Fool, placed in the tarot deck to deceive all who could not pierce the veil of illusion? No, it was placed in there for a reason. Man, it really annoys me when they are just really, really speculative, right? I speculate. I try to be clear when I speculate. Even what I feel in this video, right? Even then, I'm telling you this is speculation. I feel like this is correct. I don't know that it is correct. It seems like a good overlay. It works in the manner in which I have reached enlightenment. So, and by reaching enlightenment, I do not mean to imply that I am perfectly enlightened, right? I am well on the path. I am much ahead of most other people. And that's not prideful. I don't take it that way. I'm really not buffing me up here. I am pointing out something. The tarot cards were entrusted by the illumined hierophants of the mysteries into the keeping of the foolish and the ignorant, thus becoming playthings. In many instances, even instruments of vice. Man's evil habits, therefore, actually become the unconscious perpetuators of his philosophical precepts. We must admire the wisdom of the initiates, writes Pappas, who utilized vice and made it more beneficial results than virtue. Does not this act of the ancient priest itself afford proof that the entire mystery of the tarot is wrapped up in the symbolism of its zero card? That is actually true. If knowledge was thus entrusted to fools, should it not be sought for in this card? The whole point of the Fool card is that knowledge is indeed entrusted to the fool. Go back and watch the video and you will laugh at that. If Limad be placed before the first card of the tarot deck and the others laid out in a horizontal line in sequence from left to right, it will be found that the Fool is walking towards the other trumps as though about to pass through the various cards. Like the spiritually hoodwinked and bound neophyte, Lamad is about to enter upon the supreme adventure, that of passage through the gates of the divine wisdom. If the zero card be considered as extraneous to the major trumps, this destroys the numerical analogy between these cards and the Hebrew letters by leaving one letter without a tarot correspondent. In this event, it will be necessary to assign the missing letter to a hypothetical tarot card called the Elements, assumed to have been broken up to form the 56 cards of the major trumps. It is possible that each of the major trumps may be subject to a similar division. The first numbered major trump is called Le Batelier, the juggler, and according to Court de Goblin, indicates the entire fabric of creation to be but a dream, existence, a juggling of divine elements, and a life of a perpetual game of hazard. The seeming miracles of nature are but feats of cosmic legerdemain. Man is like the little ball in his hands of the juggler, who waves his hand and, presto, the ball vanishes. The world, looking on, does not realize that the vanished article is still cleverly concealed by the juggler in the hollow of his hand. This is also the adept whom Omar Khayyam calls the master of the show. His message is that the wise direct the phenomena of nature and are never deceived thereby. The magician stands behind a table on which are spread out a number of objects, prominent among them a cup. The Holy Grail and the cup placed by Joseph in Benjamin's sack. Are those supposed to be the same thing? Because they are not. A coin, the tribute money and the wages of the master builder, and a sword, that of Goliath, but also the mystic blade of the philosopher, which divides the false from the true. The magician's hat is in the form of the cosmic lemniscate, signifying the first motion of creation. His right hand points to the earth, his left holds aloft the rod of Jacob and also the staff that budded, the wand, the human spine, crowned with the globe of creative intelligence. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the magician wears an uraeus, or golden band, around his forehead. The table before him is in the form of a perfect cube, and his girdle is the serpent of eternity, devouring its own tail. The second numbered major trump is called La Papisse, the female pope, and has been associated with a curious legend of the only woman who ever sat in the pontifical chair. Pope Joan is supposed to have accomplished this by masquerading in malt attire and was stoned to death when her subterfuge was discovered. This card portrays a seated woman crowned with a tiara surmounted by a lunar crescent. In her lap is the Torah, or Book of the Law, usually partly closed, and in her left hand, are the keys to the secret doctrine, one gold and the other silver. Behind her raise two pillars, Jachin and Boaz, with a multicolored veil stretched between. Her throne stands upon a checkerboard floor. The figure called Juno is occasionally substituted for La Papisse. Like the female Hierophant of the Mysteries of Sybil, this symbolic figure personifies the Shekinah, or divine wisdom. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the priestess is veiled, a reminder that the full countenance truth is not revealed to the uninitiated man. A veil also covers one half of her book, thus intimating that but one half of the mystery can be comprehended. The third numbered major trump is called L'Impératrice, the Empress, and has been likened to the woman clothed with the sun described in the Apocalypse. Self-insertion. On this card appears the winged figure of a woman seated upon a throne, supporting with her right hand a shield emblazoned with a phoenix and holding in her left a scepter surmounted with an orb or trifoliate flower. Beneath her left foot is sometimes shown the crescent. Either the empress is crowned on her head or her head is surrounded by a diadem of stars, sometimes both. She is called generation and represents the threefold spiritual world out of which proceeds are the fourfold material world. To the graduate of the College of Mysteries, she is the alma mater, out of whose body the initiate has born again. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the empress is shown seated upon a cube, filled with eyes, and a bird is balanced on the forefinger of her left hand. The upper part of her body is surrounded by a radiant golden nimbus, being emblematic of the power from which emanates the entire tangible universe. L'Impératrice is frequently symbolized as pregnant. The fourth numbered trump is called L'Empereur, the Emperor, and by its numerical value is directly associated with the great deity revered by the Pythagoreans under the form of the tetrad. His symbols declare the Emperor to be the Demiurgus, the great king of the inferior world. The Emperor is dressed in armor, and his throne is a cubestone, upon which a phoenix is also clearly visible. The king has his legs crossed in a most significant manner and carries either a scepter surmounted by an orb, or a scepter in his right hand and an orb in his left. The orb is evidence that he is the supreme ruler of the world. Upon his right and left breast, respectively, appear the symbols of the sun and moon, which in symbolism are referred to as the eyes of the great king. The position of the body and legs form the symbols of sulfur, the sign of the ancient alchemical monarch. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the figure is in profile. He wears a Masonic apron, and the skirt forms a right-angled triangle. Upon his head is the crown of the north, and his forehead is adorned with the coiled Uranus. I just remembered that we skipped this. I skipped this, going to come back to it, and let's go back to it now. Early Portuguese cards. These are not tarots, right? Even though the symbology is the same, right? You have the pentacles, you have the wand, Is this supposed... There's the sword. Huh. This is a cup. That is a terrible cup. Okay, let's go back. From Chatto's Origin and History of Playing Cards. In writing the deck from which the 4 cavaliers, jacks, here reproduced were taken, William Andrew Chatto notes, some of the specimens of Portuguese cards given the jeu de cartes, taros et de cartes numerales, have very much the appearance of having been originally suggested by, if not copied from, an Oriental type, more especially in the suits of denari and bastani, money and clubs. In those cards, the circular figure, generally understood as representing denari or money, is certainly much more like the chakra or Quita of Vishnu, as seen in Hinduistic drawings, than a piece of coin. While on the top of the club is a diamond proper, which is another of the attributes of the same deity. Also worthy of note are the Rosicrucian and Masonic emblems appearing on various medieval decks. As the secrets of these organizations were often concealed in cryptic engravings, it is very probable that the enigmatic diagrams upon various decks of cards were used both to conceal and to perpetuate the political and philosophical arcana of these orders. The frontispiece of Mr. Chatto's book shows a knave of hearts bearing a shield emblazoned with a crowned Rosicrucian rose. Alright, back to 5. It's going to take me a second to get down here. That's 3, that is 4, we're on 5. The 5th numbered major trump is called Le Pape, the Pope, and represents the high priest of a pagan or Christian mystery school, and that's why it's called the Pope, right? In this card, the Hierophant wears the tiara and carries in his left hand the triple cross surmounting the globe of the world. His right hand, bearing upon its back the stigmata, makes the ecclesiastic signs of esotericism, and before him kneel 2 supplicants or acolytes. The back of the papal throne is in the form of the celestial and a terrestrial column. This card signifies the initiate or master of the mystery of life, and according to the Pythagoreans, the spiritual physician. The illusionary universe, in the form of the 2 figures, polarity, kneels before the throne upon which sits the initiate, who has elevated his consciousness to the plane of spiritual understanding and reality. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the master wears the uraeus, a white and black figure, life and death, light and darkness, good and evil, kneel before him. The initiate's mastery over unreality is indicated by the tiara and the triple cross, emblems of rulership over the 3 worlds which have issued from the unknowable first cause. The 6th numbered trump is called Les Amoureux, the Lovers, which are 2 distinct forms of this tarot. One shows a marriage ceremony in which a priest is uniting a youth and a maiden, Adam and Eve, in holy wedlock, because there was a priest to join Adam and Eve. Sometimes a winged finger above transfixes the lovers with his dart. The second form of the card portrays a youth with a female figure on either side. One of these figures wears a golden crown and is winged, while the other is attired in the flowing robes of the Bacchante, and on her head is a wreath of vine leaves. The maidens represent the 2-fold soul of man, spiritual and animal. The first his guardian angel, and the second his ever-present demon. The youth stands at the beginning of mature life, the parting of the ways, where he must choose between virtue and vice, the eternal and the temporal. Above, in a halo of light, is the genius of fate, his star, mistaken for Cupid by the uninformed. If the youth chooses unwisely, the arrow of blindfolded fate will transfix him. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the arrow of the genius points directly to the figure of vice, thereby signifying that the end of her path is destruction. The card reminds man that the price of free will, or more correctly, the power of choice, is responsibility. The 7th numbered trump is called Le Chariot, the chariot, and portrays a victorious warrior, crowned and riding in a chariot, drawn by black and white sphinxes, or horses. The starry canopy of the chariot is upheld by 4 columns. This card signifies the exalted one who rides in the chariot of creation. The vehicle of the solar energy, being numbered 7, reveals the arcane truth that the seven planers are the chariots of the solar power which ride victorious in their midst. The four columns supporting the canopy represent the four mighty ones who uphold the worlds, represented by the star-strewn drapery. The figure carries the scepter of the solar energy, and its shoulders are ornamented with lunar crescents, the Urim and Thummim. The sphinxes drawn the chariot represent the secret and unknown power by which the victorious ruler is moved continuously through the various parts of his universe. In certain tarot decks, the victor signifies the regenerated man, for the body of the chariot is a cubic stone. The man in armor is not standing in the chariot, but is rising out of the cube, thus typifying the ascension of the three out of the four, the turning upward of the flap of the master mason's apron. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the warrior carries the curved sword of Luna, is bearded to signify maturity, and wears the collar of the planetary orbits. His scepter, emblematic of the threefold universe, is crowned with a square upon which a circle surmounted by a triangle. And that is the end of the mastery of the path of Earth. The eighth numbered trump is called La Justice, justice, and portrays a seated figure upon a throne, the back of which rises in the form of two columns. Justice is crowned and carries in her right hand a sword and in her left a pair of scales, and so we begin the path of spirit. The card is a reminder of the judgment of the soul in the Hall of Osiris. It teaches that only balanced forces can endure, and that eternal justice destroys the sword with that which is unbalanced. Sometimes justice is depicted with a braid of her own hair twisted around her neck in a manner resembling a hangman's knot. This may subtly imply that man is the cause of his own undoing, his actions, symbolized by his hair, being the instrument of his annihilation. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the figure of justice is raised upon a dais of 3 steps, for justice can be fully administered only by such as has been elevated to the 3rd degree. Justice is blindfolded, that the visible shall in no way influence his decision. For reasons he considered beyond his reader's intelligence, Mr. White reversed the 8th and 11th major trumps. There's a reason. The 9th major trump is called Le Hermite, the hermit, and portrays an aged man, robed in monkish habit and cowl, leaning on a staff. This card was popularly supposed to represent Diogenes in his quest for an honest man. In his right hand the recluse carries a lamp, which he partly conceals within the folds of his cape. The hermit thereby personifies the secret organizations which, for uncounted centuries, have carefully concealed the light of the ancient wisdom from the profane. The staff of the hermit is knowledge, which is man's main and only enduring support. Sometimes the mystic rod is divided by knobs into 7 sections, a subtle reference to the mystery of the 7 sacred centers along the human spine. We talk about the chakras all the time. There are actually 8, but 7 are internal, 1 is external. Right? 7 plus 1. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the hermit shields the lamp behind a rectangular cape to emphasize the philosophic truth that wisdom, if exposed to the fury of ignorance, would be destroyed like the tiny flame of a lamp, unprotected from the storm. Man's body forms a cloak through which his divine nature is faintly visible, like the flame of a partly covered lantern. Through renunciation, the hermetic life, man attains depth of character and tranquility of spirit. Life is about balance, it is not about exclusion. The 10th numbered major trump is called La Roue de Fortune, the Wheel of Fortune, and portrays a mysterious wheel with 8 spokes, the familiar Buddhist symbol of the cycle of necessity. To its rim cling Anubis and Typhon, the principles of good and evil. Above sits the immobile Sphinx, carrying the sword of justice and signifying the perfect equilibrium of universal wisdom. Anubis is shown rising and Typhon descending, but when Typhon reaches the bottom, evil ascends again, and when Anubis reaches the top, good wanes once more. The Wheel of Fortune represents the lower universe as a whole, with divine wisdom, the Sphinx, as the eternal arbiter between good and evil. In India, the chakra, or wheel, is associated with the life centers either of a world or of an individual. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the Sphinx is armed with a javelin, and Typhon is being thrown from the wheel. The vertical columns supporting the wheel, and so placed that but one is visible, represent the axis of the world, with the inscrutable Sphinx upon its northern pole. Sometimes the wheel with its supports is on a boat of the water. The water is the ocean of illusion, which is the sole foundation of the cycle of necessity. The 11th numbered trump is called La Force, strength, and portrays a girl wearing a hat in the form of a lemniscate, with her hands upon the mouth of an apparently ferocious lion. Considerable controversy exists as to whether the maid is closing or opening the lion's mouth. Most writers declare her to be closing the jaws of the beast, but a critical inspection conveys the opposite impression. The young woman symbolizes spiritual strength, and the lion either the animal world which the girl is mastering, or the secret wisdom over which she is mistress. The lion also signifies the summer solstice, and the girl, Virgo, for when the sun enters this constellation. The virgin robs the lion of his strength. King Solomon's throne was ornamented with lions, and he himself was likened to the key of beast, with the key of wisdom between his teeth. There's a self-insert. In this sense, the girl may be opening the lion's mouth to find the key. Contained therein for courage is a prerequisite for the attainment of knowledge. No. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the symbolism is the same, except that the maiden is represented as a priestess wearing an elaborate crown in the form of a bird surmounted by serpents and an ibis. The 12th numbered major trump is called Le Pendu, the hanged man, and portrays a young man hanging by his left leg from a horizontal beam, the latter supported by 2 tree trunks, from each of which 6 branches have been removed. The right leg of the youth is crossed in back of the left, and his arms are folded behind his back in such a way as to form a cross, surmounting a downward pointing triangle. The figure thus forms an inverted symbol of sulfur, and, according to Levi, signifies the accomplishment of the magnum opus. In some decks, the figure carries under each arm a money bag from which coins are escaping. Popular tradition associates this card with Judas Iscariot, who is said to have gone forth and hanged himself, the money bags representing the payment he received for his crime, and again we have self-insertion. Levi likens the hangman to Prometheus, the eternal sufferer, further declaring that the upturned feet signify the spiritualization of the lower nature. It is also possible that the inverted figure denotes the loss of the spiritual faculties, for the head is below the level of the body. The stumps of the 12 branches are the signs of the zodiac, divided into 2 groups, positive and negative. The picture therefore depicts polarity, temporarily triumphant over the spiritual principle of equilibrium. To attain the heights of philosophy, therefore, man must reverse or invert the order of his life. He then loses his sense of personal possession because he renounces the rule of gold in favor of the golden rule. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the hangman is suspended between 2 palm trees and signifies the sun god who died perennially for his world. The 13th numbered major trump is called Le Mort, death. It portrays a reaping skeleton with a great scythe cutting off the heads, hands, and feet rising out of the earth about it. In the course of his labors, the skeleton has apparently cut off one of his own feet. Not all the tarot decks show this peculiarity, but this point well emphasizes the philosophic truth that unbalance and destructiveness are synonymous. The skeleton is the proper emblem of the first and supreme deity because it is the foundation of the body, as the absolute is the foundation of creation. The reaping skeleton, physically, signifies death, but philosophically, that irresistible impulse in nature which causes every being to be ultimately absorbed into the divine condition in which it existed before the illusionary universe had been manifested. The blade of the scythe is the moon with its crystallizing power. The field in which death reaps is the universe, and the card discloses that all things growing out of the earth shall be cut down and return to earth again. Kings, queens, courtesans, and knaves alike are alike to death, the master of the visible and a parent parts of all creatures. In some tarot decks, death is symbolized as a figure in armor, mounted on a white horse, which tramples underfoot old and young alike. In this pseudo-Egyptian tarot, a rainbow is seen behind the figure of death, thus signifying that the mortality of the body of itself achieves the immortality of the spirit. Death, though it destroys form, can never destroy life, which continually renews itself. This card is the symbol of the constant renovation of the universe, disintegration that reintegration may follow upon a higher level of expression. The 14th major trump is called La Temperance, temperance, and portrays an angelic figure with the sun upon her forehead. She carries two urns, one empty and the other full, and continually pours the contents of the upper into the lower. In some tarot decks, the flowing water takes the form of the symbol of Aquarius. Not one drop, however, of the living water is lost in the endless transference between the superior vessel and the inferior. When the lower urn is filled, the vases are reversed, thus signifying that life pours first from the invisible into the visible, then from the visible back into the visible. The spirit controlling this flow is an emissary of the great Jehovah, demiurgus of the world. The sun, or light cluster, upon the woman's forehead controls the flow of water, which, being drawn upward into the air by the solar rays, descends upon the earth as rain, to draw up and fall again ad infinitum. Herein is also shown the passage of the human life forces back and forth between positive and negative poles of the creative system. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the symbolism is the same, except that the winged figure is male instead of female. It is surrounded by a solar nimbus and pours water from a golden urn into a silver one, typifying the descent of celestial forces into the sublunary spheres. And so ends the spiritual path. The 15th numbered trump is called Le Diable, the devil, and portrays a creature resembling Pan with the horns of a ram or deer, the arms and body of a man, and the legs and feet of a goat or dragon. And so begins the the path of the divine. The figure stands upon a cubic stone to a ring, in the front of which are chained two satyrs. For a scepter, this so-called demon carries a lighted torch or candle. The entire figure is a symbolic of magic powers of the astral light, or universal mirror, in which the divine forces are reflected in an inverted or infernal state. The demon is winged like a bat, showing it pertains to the nocturnal or shadow inferior sphere, the beginning of the divine path. The animal natures of man, in the form of a man and female elemental, are chained to its footstool. The torch is the false light which guides unillumined souls to their own undoing. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot appears Typhon, a winged creature composed of a hog, a man, a bat, a crocodile, and a hippopotamus, standing in the midst of his own destructiveness and holding aloft the firebrand of the incendiary. Typhon is created by man's own misdeeds, which, turning upon their maker, destroy him. The 16th numbered major trump is called Le Feu du Ciel, the fire of heaven, and portrays a tower, the battlements of which, in the form of a crown, are being destroyed by a bolt of lightning issuing from the sun, and so you make your choice. The crown, being considerably smaller than the tower which it surmounts, possibly indicates that the destruction resulted from its insufficiency. No. The lightning bolt sometimes takes the form of a zodiacal sign of Scorpio, and the tower may be considered a phallic emblem. Of course, everything means a penis. Two figures are falling from the tower, one in front and the other behind. This tarot card is popularly associated with the traditional fall of man. The divine nature of humanity is depicted as a tower. When his crown is destroyed, man falls into the lower world and takes upon himself the illusion of materiality. Here also is a key to the mystery of sex. The tower is supposedly filled with gold coins, which, showering out in great numbers from the rent made by the lightning bolts, suggesting potential powers. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the tower is a pyramid, its apex shattered by a lightning bolt. Here is a reference to the missing capstone of the universal house, in support of Levi's contention that this card is connected with the Hebrew letter ayin. The falling figure in the foreground is similar in general appearance to the 16th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Wow. The 17th numbered major trump is called Les Stolies, the stars, and portrays a young girl kneeling with one foot in the water and the other on, and her body somewhat suggesting the swastika. She has 2 urns, the content of which she pours upon the land and sea. Above the girl's head are 8 stars, one of which is exceptionally large and bright. Count the Goblin considers this great star to be Sothis or Sirius. The other 7 are the sacred planets of the ancients. He believes the female figure to be Isis in the act of causing the inundations of the Nile, which accompanied the rising of the dog star. The unclothed figure of Isis may well signify that nature does not receive her garment of azure until the rising of the Nile waters releases the germinal life of plants and flowers. The bush and bird, or butterfly, signify the growth and resurrection which accompany the rising of the waters. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the great star contains a diamond, composed of a black and white triangle, and the flowering bush is a tall plant with a trifoliate head upon it. It's because it's the number 3 in the new path. Here, Isis is in the form of an upright triangle, and the vases have become shallow cups. The element of water and earth under her feet represent the opposites of nature, sharing impartially in the divine abundance. The 18th numbered major trump is called La Lune, the moon, and portrays Luna rising between 2 towers, one light and the other dark. A dog and wolf are baying at the rising moon, and in the foreground is a pool of water from which emerges a crawfish. Between the towers, a path winds, vanishing in the extreme background. Court de Goblin sees in this card another reference to the rising of the Nile, and states on the authority of Pausanias that the Egyptians believed the inundations of the Nile to result from the tears of the moon goddess, which, falling into the river, swelled it to flow. These tears are seen dropping from the lunar face. Court de Goblin also relates the towers to the pillars of Hercules, beyond which, according to the Egyptians, the luminaries never passed. He notes also that the Egyptians represented the tropics as dogs, who, as faithful doorkeepers, prevented the sun and moon from penetrating too near the poles. The crab or crawfish signifies the retrograde motion of the moon. We're going to fall back real quick and check out this card from the Magenta pack. From Taylor's The History of Playing Cards. Among the more curious examples of playing cards are those of the Mantegna deck. In 1820, a perfect deck of 50 cards brought the then amazing price of 80 pounds. 80 pounds. The 50 subjects composing the Mantegna deck, each of which is represented by an appropriate figure, are a beggar, a page, a goldsmith, a merchant, a gentleman, a knight, the doge, a king, an emperor, the pope, Calliope, Urania, Terpsichore, Erato, Polyhymnia, Thalia, Melpomene, Euterpe, Clio, Apollo, grammar, logic, rhetoric, geometry, arithmetic, music, poetry, philosophy, astrology, theology, astronomy, chronology, cosmology, temperance, prudence, fortitude, justice, charity, fortitude, faith, the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the 8th sphere, the premium mobile, the first cause. The Kabbalistic significance of these cards is apparent, and it is possible that they have a direct analogy to the 50 gates of light referred to in Kabbalistic writings. This card, going back to the 18th card, this card refers to the path of wisdom. A man in his quest of reality emerges from the pool of illusion. After mastering the guardians of the gates of wisdom, he passes between the fortresses of science and theology, and follows the winding path leading to spiritual liberation. His way is faintly lighted by human reason, the moon, but which is but a reflection of divine wisdom. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the towers are pyramids, the dogs are black and white respectively, and the moon is partly obscured by clouds. The entire scene suggests the dreary and desolate place in which the mystery dramas of the lesser rites were enacted. The 19th numbered major trump is called Le Soleil, the sun, and betrays two children, probably Gemini the twins, standing together in a garden, surrounded by a magic ring of flowers. One of these children should be shown as male and the other female. Behind them is a brick wall, apparently enclosing the garden. Above the wall, the sun is rising, its rays alternately straight and curved. 13 teardrops are falling from the solar face of Levi, seeing in the two children faith and reason, which must coexist as long as the temporal universe endures. Right. Human equilibrium requires 2 feet. The worlds gravitate by means of 2 forces. Generation needs 2 sexes. Such is the meaning of the Arcanum of Solomon, represented by the 2 pillars of the temple, Jachin and Boaz. See Transcendental Magic. The Sun of Truth is shining into the garden of the world, over which these 2 children, as personifications of eternal powers, reside. The harmony of the world depends upon the coordination of 2 qualities, symbolized throughout the ages as the mind and the heart. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the children give place to a youth and maiden. Above them, in a solar nimbus, is the phallic emblem of generation, a line penetrating a circle. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and the 2 children personify the serpents entwined about the caduceus. The 20th numbered major trump is called Le Jugement, the judgment, and portrays 3 figures, rising, apparently, from their tombs, though but one coffin is visible. Above them, in a blaze of glory, is a winged figure, presumably the angel Gabriel, blowing a trumpet. This tarot represents the liberation of man's threefold spiritual nature from the sepulchre of his material constitution. Since but 1/3 of the spirit actually enters the physical body, the other 2/3 constituting the hermetic anthropos, or overman. Only one of the 3 figures is actually rising from the tomb. Cord de Goblin believes that the coffin may have been an afterthought of the card makers, and that the scene actually represents creation rather than resurrection. No, in philosophy these 2 words are practically synonymous. The blast of the trumpet represents the creative word, by the intoning of which man is liberated from his terrestrial limitations. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, it is evident that the 3 figures signify the parts of a single being, for 3 mummies are shown emerging from one mummy case, and so ends the attainable part of the divine path. The 21st numbered major trump is called Le Monde, the world, and portrays a female figure draped with a scarf, which the wind blows into the form of the Hebrew letter Kaf. Her extended hands, each of which holds a wand, and her left leg, which crosses behind the right, cause the figure to assume the form of the alchemical symbol of sulfur. The central figure is surrounded by a wreath in the form of the Vesica Pisces, which, like Levi, likens to the Kabbalistic crown Kether. The cherubim of Ezekiel's vision occupy the corners of the card. This tarot is called the microcosm and the macrocosm because in it are summed up every agency contributing to the structure of creation. The figure in the form of the emblem of sulfur represents the divine fire and the heart of the great mystery. The wreath is nature, which surrounds the fiery center. The cherubim represent the elements, worlds, forces, and planes issuing out of the divine, fiery center of life. The wreath signifies the crown of the initiate, which is given to those who master the 4 guardians and enter into the presence of unveiled truth. In the pseudo-Egyptian tarot, the cherubim surround a wreath composed of 12 trifoliate flowers, the decantes of the zodiac. A human figure kneels below this wreath, playing upon a harp of 3 strings, for the spirit must create harmony in the triple constitution of its inferior nature before it can gain for itself the solar crown of immortality. The four suits of the minor trumps are considered as analogous to the four elements, the four corners of creation, and the four worlds of Kabbalism. The key to the lesser tarots is presumably the tetragrammaton, or the four-letter name of Jehovah. No. The four suits of the minor trump represent also the major division of a society. Cups are priesthood, swords the military, coins are tradesmen, and rods the farming class. Again, no. From the standpoint of what Court de Gobelin calls political geography. Cups represent the northern countries, swords the Orient, coins the Occident, and rods the southern countries. Again, no. The 10 pip cards of each suit represents the nations composing each of these grand divisions. The kings are their governments, the queens their religions, the knights their histories and national characteristics, and pages their arts and sciences. Elaborate treatises have been written concerning the use of the tarot cards in divination, but as this practice is contrary to the primary purpose of the tarot, no profit can result from its discussion. Many interesting examples of early playing cards are found in the museums of Europe, and there are also noteworthy specimens in the cabinets of various private collectors. A few hand-painted decks exist which are extremely artistic. These depict various important personages contemporary with the artist. In some instances, the court cards are portraitures of the reigning monarch and his family. In England, engraved cards became popular, and in the British Museum are also to be seen some extremely quaint stenciled cards. Heraldic devices were employed, and Chatto, in his Origin and History of Playing Cards, reproduces 4 heraldic cards in which the arms of Pope Clement IX adorn the clubs. There have been philosophical decks with emblems chosen from Greek and Roman mythology, also educational decks ornamented with maps or pictorial representations of famous historic places and incidents. Many rare examples of playing cards have been found bound into the covers of early books. In Japan, there are card games, the successful playing of which requires familiarity with nearly all the literary masterpieces of that nation. In India, there are circular decks depicting episodes from Oriental myths. There are also cards, which, in one sense of the word, are not cards, for the designs are on wood, ivory, or even metal. There are comic cards caricaturing disliked persons and places. There are cards commemorating various human achievements. During the American Civil War, a patriotic deck was circulated in which stars, eagles, anchors, and American flags were substituted for the suits, and the court cards were famous generals. Modern playing cards are the minor trumps of the tarot. No. From each suit of which the page or valet has been eliminated. Yeah, so it's not. If they have to eliminate one card from each suit, then it is not the same thing, leaving 13 cards. Even in its abridged form, however, the modern deck is of profound symbolic importance, for its arrangement is apparently in accord with the divisions of the year. The two colors, red and black, represent the 2 grand divisions of the year, that during which the sun is north of the equator and that during which it is south of the equator. The 4 suits represent the seasons, the ages of the ancient Greeks, and the yugas of the Hindus. Okay, whatever. The 12 court cards are the signs of the zodiac, arranged in the triads of a father, a power, and a mind, according to the upper sections of the Bembine table. The 10 pip cards of each suit represent the sephirotic trees existing in each of the 4 worlds. Again, no, the suits. The 13 cards of each suit are the 13 lunar months in each year, and the 52 cards of the deck are the 52 weeks of the year. Counting the number of pips and reckoning the jacks, queens, and kings as 11, 12, and 13 respectively, the sum for the 52 cards is 364. If the joker is considered as 1 point, the result is 365, or the number of days in the year. Milton Pottinger believed that the United States of America was laid out according to the conventional deck of playing cards, and that the government will ultimately consist of 52 states administered by a 53rd undenominated division, the District of Columbia, and we are not there as of yet. The court cards contain a number of important Masonic symbols. 9 are full face and 3 are profile. Here is the broken wheel of the law, signifying the 9 months of the prenatal epoch and the 3 degrees of spiritual unfoldment necessary to produce the perfect man. The 4 armed kings are the Egyptian Ammonian architects who gouged out the universe with knives. They are also the cardinal signs of the zodiac. The 4 queens, carrying the 8 petal flowers symbolic of Christ, are the fixed signs of the zodiac. The 4 jacks, 2 of whom bear acacia sprigs, the jack of hearts in his hand, the jack of clubs in his hat, are the 4 common signs of the zodiac. It should be noted also that the court cards of the spade suit will not look upon the pip in the corner of the card, but face away from it as though fearing this emblem of death. The Grand Master of the Order of Cards is the King of Clubs, who carries the orb as emblematic of his dignity. In its symbolism, chess is the most significant of all games. It has been called the royal game, the pastime of kings. Like the tarot cards, the chessmen represent the elements of life and philosophy. The game was played in India and China long before its introduction into Europe. The Indian princes were wont to sit upon the balconies of their palaces and play chess with living men, standing upon a checkerboard pavement of black and white marble in the courtyard below. It is popularly believed that the Egyptian pharaohs played chess, but an examination of their sculpture and illuminations has led to the conclusion that the Egyptian game was a form of draughts. In China, chessmen are often carved to represent warring dynasties, as the Manchu and the Ming. The chessboard consists of 64 squares, alternately black and white, and symbolizes the floor of the House of Mysteries. Upon this, that actually symbolizes something different. Upon this field of existence, or thought, move a number of strange or strangely carved figures. Here, let's go ahead and do that. Each fixed according to law. 64 squares is divisible by 8, which is the important number, right? But the alternating black and white is symbolic of the divine aura, which is the 8th of the auras by which you have access to, and it is not gray, but it is instead perfectly black and white mixed. There are 64 divisions. The white king is Ormond, the black king Ahriman, and upon the plains of the cosmos the great war between light and darkness is fought through all the ages. Of the philosophical constitution of man, the kings represent the spirit, the queens the mind, the bishops the emotions, the knights the vitality, the castles or rooks the physical body. The pieces upon the king's side are positive, those upon the queen's side negative. The pawns are the sensory impulses and perceptive faculties, the 8 parts of the soul. The white king and his suites symbolize the self and its vehicles. The black king and his retinue, the not-self, the false ego and its legion. The game of chess thus sets forth the eternal struggle of each part of man's compound nature against the shadow of itself. The nature of each of the chessmen is revealed by the way in which it moves. Geometry is the key to their interpretation. For example, the castle, the body, moves on the square. The bishop, the emotions, moves on the slant. The king, being the spirit, cannot be captured, but loses the battle when so surrounded that it cannot escape. And so ends this section, and I know I have almost certainly stepped on some toes, especially if you look at the traditional view of the tarot. But I do not do so arbitrarily, as I frequently say. I have a tendency to step on toes when I am relaying information, but it is not intentional, nor do I apologize for it. Some of the things in this are probably true, and some of them are patently false. If you are unfamiliar and you have not already, you should definitely go back and check out the tarot if you are interested in this. The laying out of the 3 paths of enlightenment and the whole sequence of events makes sense if you do it in order. And in order for me to do it here, it would be another 2 hours. So we're not going to do that. I'm going to refer you back to the videos that is in this playlist, the Esoterica playlist. You can go back and watch my explanation for why these things seem to fit with the path of enlightenment that I have already taken. We didn't stop at card 21 because I thought that there was more explanation. But card 21 represents the divinity. It is unattainable while you are physically here. So the end of the path is actually 20, but 21 is the completion of the path, right after death, divine. The separation between death and divine is portrayed by the Fool in the classic placement of the Fool in the number tarot. Why else would you put 0 between 20 and 21? The division of 7 is very important. The division of 8 is also very important. There is an eightfold path, right? With 8 being the beginning of the new path. There are 7 steps in each individual part of the path, and the 8th part is the beginning of the second section of the path. All of this is clearly outlined in the videos that I keep referencing you to. If you watch the entirety of one of those videos, I get like a penny. This is not about monetary compensation. This is about directing you to what I do feel is like correct information. What is done here is in large part self-insertion. Now, I self-inserted. I talk about that in the videos, how it is my opinion and how I do believe that it is a true one, but it's not necessarily so. We didn't stop and talk about the divination part of this because we have talked about it before. We will hit on it briefly. I do believe that you can read the energies of now. I do not believe that you can read the energies of far into the future. It is too volatile. Too much can change between now and then. Free will is an actual thing, and because of that, the farther away from now you get, the harder it is to read the energies. But I do believe that using the tarot, you can read the energies. I have a friend of mine named Helen who is Angel Wing Holistics, and she does a really good job of reading the energies of right now, and so I refer back to her for things of tarot and divination. She's not trying to tell your fortune. She's trying to read the energies of now and how they might relate to you. It seems to work fairly well. It has for me on several occasions been direct confirmation of things. This chess analogy in part can be true, but in part is probably again wrong. I have not spent the time deep diving that in the way that I did the tarot, right? I spent a lot of time doing the tarot math before we talked about it here. I have not done that for chess, so I can't speak much on that. But what I talked about with the aura, that is a real thing. The divine aura, which you have access to if you are properly aligned in your stack according to the 8 laws of creation and the various steps I outline in the Infinite Integrations playlist, you can use that to manifest things in your life. It is white and black, not gray. It is the perfect balance of the positive and negative working together. If you are seeing colors in your divine aura, you have a misalignment somewhere else in your stack. And so that is where I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I know that I have a tendency to step on toes. I know that it probably hurts somebody's feelings the way that I talk in here, and it is not intentional, right? I do what I have to do, I say what I have to say, and I don't do it to step on toes, but if your toes get stepped on, then they probably needed to be stepped on a little bit. A lot of this is self-insertion. A lot of this is the Masons trying to do something. I am not a Mason. I have no secret oaths. I have nobody to hold me to account. I am here to freely dispense what little wisdom that I have picked up over my 47 years. I have reached a level of enlightenment that most people do not attain. I don't say that with heady thoughts or feelings. I say that with humility and humbleness. I am just beginning on the path, but I am several steps ahead from most people, including the people involved in this. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. And if you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt State. Peace.